Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. This is your teacher Umar Tabriz Shami for the BSc course of Automotive Electronics, course code 202. Welcome to this video lecture. This video lecture is part 2 of electronic fundamentals. I pray to Allah for the well-being of all of my students. I pray to Allah that may Allah keep all of my students in His safety. Last time, in our part 1 of the online lecture of electronic fundamentals, we have started to study chapter number 12. The first article was semiconductors, the definition, the examples of semiconductors, the construction of a semiconductor, then the p-type material and the n-type material. We discussed the formation of n-type material, the doping and the impurities required to create an n-type material, and we also discussed the p-type material and the materials required to create a p-type material. Then after discussing p-type and n-type material, we discussed the p-n junction, and we came to the article called the diodes. We discussed the diode symbol, the diode application during forward bias and reverse bias condition. After this, we discussed the diode properties, the diode characteristics during while the diode is operating in the first quadrant and in the second quadrant. First quadrant, while the diode is operating in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant. The diode is forward biased in the first quadrant and the diode is reverse biased in the third quadrant. Then we discussed the specifications of a diode in terms of current, in terms of peak inverse voltage, and we also discussed the diode models which are readily available in the market. After the diode came the special purpose diode called the Zener diode. We discussed that the Zener diode is a special diode used during the reverse bias condition, and it will regulate the output voltage. We discussed its characteristics in the forward bias condition and in the reverse bias condition. And just as a recap, the Zener diode is meant, or its purpose is to be used in the reverse bias condition, that is in the third quadrant. Then we saw a simple circuit consisting of a Zener diode being used to regulate output voltage. Now, in today's article, I want to discuss applications of diodes, applications of Zener diode for automotive studies, for automotive usages. We will also discuss another special purpose diode called the LED. So first, let us come to the application of a simple diode. This circuit diagram shows the application of diodes being used to convert AC voltage into DC voltage. Most of our diodes, 80% cases in the industry, the diodes are used to convert AC power into DC power, or they are used to convert AC voltage or AC current into DC voltage or DC current. We can convert AC into DC either using single diode, that will be the half bridge converter, or we can use full wave converters. This circuit diagram that you see consisting of 4 diodes D1, D2, D3 and D4 connected across the secondary of a transformer is a full wave rectifier which converts all of the sine wave into DC. So let us first of all discuss the circuit. Here we see an AC power supply. This means that the input of the AC power supply will be a sine wave. This is a sine wave. For example, our utility supplies, WAPDA, provides us sine wave, and sine wave is readily available. However, most of our applications, for example, DC chargers, mobile phone chargers, laptop chargers, LED televisions, they need DC voltages. So we have to convert the AC being provided from our utility supply company. We have to convert the AC into DC, and the most convenient method is to use bridge rectifier. This is the bridge rectifier or rectifier bridge. It consists of 4 diodes D1, D2, D3, D4. Now this bridge rectifier, it will be used with a capacitor. Although the capacitor is not shown here at this moment, but it will be used with an output capacitor. The capacitor purpose is to regulate or to smoothen the output voltage. Now let us look at the waveforms. The first waveform shows the input voltage. This is the input voltage. This is the input AC voltage. Input AC voltage at the transformer primarily, and the transformer will transform this voltage, but again the secondary output voltage will also be sine wave. It will also be a sine wave. Now we have to convert this secondary output voltage sine wave into a DC, and for this purpose we are using 4 diodes D1, D2, D3, D4. So this sine wave is the output of the secondary terminals of the transformer. This is the secondary terminals, and here is the output. AC input, AC output. So AC input waveform, we also get AC output waveform. After this comes the 4 diodes D1, D2, D3, D4, and the collective output of the 4 diodes is the DC ripple DC output voltage. First ripple, second ripple, third ripple, fourth ripple. Now technically speaking, we have achieved what we wanted from the 4 diodes, that we have achieved a DC. But this DC has a few problems. First problem is that this DC is not constant. It is DC as it is always positive. However, it is a non-constant DC. It is non-stable. Second problem is that there is a wide voltage gap between the maximum DC and the minimum DC, which is called the ripple. In this case, there is a maximum ripple equal to V maximum. So we have to remove these two problems, and to remove these two problems, what we have is that we will use a capacitor parallel to the load. If R is the load, then we will use a capacitor in parallel to the load, and this capacitor will smooth out the output voltage. And in the third diagram, we see the capacitor in action. Actually, so actually now in the third diagram we see two waveforms. First waveform are the dotted lines. These dotted lines represent the output DC voltage without capacitor. And then we see a bold green colored line or bold green colored waveform. This is the output voltage due to capacitor or while using a capacitor. If we remove this capacitor, we will get the dotted lines. And if we use this capacitor, we will get the bold green colored waveform. This bold colored waveform is much more stable. It is much more stable, and the peak to peak voltage is also now reduced. So while using bridge rectifiers, it is mandatory to use DC capacitors. Now let us come to the operation of our bridge rectifier. We see four diodes D1 and D2, D3, D4. Two diodes will conduct during each half of the sine wave. Two diodes will conduct, or two diodes will allow current to pass during each half wave of the during each half of the sine wave. For example, this is first half of the sine wave. We call this the positive half of the sine wave, and this is the second half of the sine wave. We call it the second half. So one half, second half brings us to 2 pi, and one cycle is complete. For each half, we will have a pair of diodes conducting. For the positive half, D1 and D2 will conduct, and for the negative half, D3 and D4 will conduct. Now, this means that if we are using diodes made up of silicon, the voltage drop of a silicon diode is 0.7 volt. So if we are providing 10 volts peak at the input of the rectifier, and during each half two diodes will conduct, that means the two diodes will minus 1.4 volts due to the voltage drop of each diode. 0.7 plus 0.7, 1.4, and hence the output voltage will be 8.6 volts. Yeah. So in the next slide we will see an animation of the bridge rectifier. So we will discuss the working of the bridge rectifier for each half wave separately. In the first case, or in the first animation, we will look at what happens when the sine wave is positive, how the positive half of the sine wave is rectified to DC. So here is our input voltage, it is a sine wave. Here is our transformer. It can be step up transformer, it can be step down transformer, or it can be 1:1 ratios transformer. Then the secondary of the transformers, or the secondary of the transformer is connected to the rectifier bridge consisting of D1, D2, D3 and D4, and here is the load. This is the load. Now this animation shows the activity during the positive half of the sine wave. During the positive half, what we get is that the sine wave is positive. The sine wave is positive. Input. The sine wave is also positive at the secondary. And what happens that this current, this dot showing the electron, this dot showing the conventional current. This dot, which represents the conventional current, first flows through D1, then through RL, then through D2, and then return to the transformer. And the output voltage, we get a positive voltage across VL, that is the load voltage. Now we come to the second half, where we have to rectify the negative part of the sine wave. This is the same diagram, the input voltage, the transformer, the rectifier, but now this time we will experience the negative half of the sine wave as shown by the primary side, where the dot represents the primary input current. This is the negative half over here. This is the negative half. So what will happen on the secondary, that this dot again representing the conventional current, it will now flow in the opposite direction, and it will flow through D4, through the load, through D3, and it will return to the transformer. In both cases, either in the positive case or in the negative case, we can see that the current always enters the RL through one side and it always exits through the other side. Hence, the output voltage will always remain unidirectional, positive. If we reverse connect all the 4 diodes, then we will get a reverse output, negative output voltage. So this was the animation of the bridge rectifier. Right, so after this we will come to the next application of the diode. This application is called clamping diodes. That is diodes being used to remove high voltage spikes. So we will look at the conditions when high voltage spikes are produced, and then we will look as how the diode will help to reduce or even sometimes totally eliminate high voltage spikes. Okay, so clamping diodes. Diode can be used as a high voltage clamping device when the power is connected to cathode of the diode. If a coil is pulsed on and off, a high voltage spike is produced whenever the coil is turned off. We will look what is this sentence. We will look in the diagram what is the interpretation of this sentence. Further onward, the author says to control and direct this possibly damaging high voltage spike, a diode can be installed across the leads to the coil to redirect high voltage spike back through the coil winding to prevent possible damage to the rest of the vehicle's electrical or electronic circuit. So a diode connected across the terminal of a coil to control voltage spike is called a clamping diode. Clamping diode can also be called de-spiking or suppression diode. Right. So what is the meaning of this sentence? If a coil is pulsed on and off, a high voltage spike is produced whenever the coil is turned off. So let us look at figure number A. let us look at figure number A. That is, we have the battery positive terminal, we have a switch, and we have a coil, and we have the negative terminal of the battery over here. A coil can be used to reduce the current ripple, like a capacitor is used to reduce the voltage ripple. A coil can be used, and coil or an inductor can be used to reduce the current ripple. It can be used to allow it can be used to make current flow evenly. However, a coil is dangerous also. How is a coil dangerous? Because a coil will produce a high voltage whenever there is a change in current. A coil by nature, an inductor by nature, does not allow instantaneous change in the current. So we as engineers have to take care that inductor, how will the inductor respond when the current changes? How should we take care of the current through the inductor when the current changes? Because the inductor does not allow current to change instantaneously. So in the first diagram, part number A, we will look at the operation or the response of the coil without a diode, and then we will highlight the problem that the coil produces, and then we will resolve this problem using a diode. So first of all, there is the battery positive terminal, the coil, the switch, the coil, and then the battery negative. So we turn on the switch is short circuited. As a result, a current flows into the coil, through the coil, and it flows into the battery negative. So that is quite simple. But what will happen when we turn off this switch SW? When we open this switch, since there was initial current in the coil, the inductor will produce a large voltage across itself, so to make current flow as it was flowing when the switch was short circuit. Listen again, that in the first case, the switch is short circuit, current flows through the battery, through the switch, into the coil, and into the battery negative terminal. Now, what will happen when we turn off the switch or when we open the switch? This current coming from the battery will be finished. This will be finished. But due to the property of inductor, that is, the current since there was current in the inductor, therefore the inductor will not allow current to come to 0 ampere instantaneously. This is the problem with the inductor, that the inductor do not change the current instantaneously. We opened the switch instantaneously, the battery will stop providing the current instantaneously, but the coil will, or the inductor will not finish the current instantaneously. Hence, what will be the response of the inductor? The response of the inductor is that with the open switch, the inductor will build a positive voltage across itself. Now, this is the voltage spike. This is the reason of voltage spike. When we have turned off the switch, as written over here, turn off the switch, there is a voltage spike. Hence, this voltage spike will be dangerous, and it will damage. It is possible that it will damage the rest of the vehicle's electrical or electronic circuit. This is a problem that we have to resolve. And how do we solve this problem? problem is solved by using a diode in the opposite direction, like as shown in figure part number B, figure 12.9 part number B. So let us start with the operation. That first of all, we short circuit the switch SW. As a result, a current flows through the switch. It cannot flow through the diode because it is reverse biased. Hence, the current will flow through the inductor, and it will flow into the battery negative. Okay? Now, second step, let us now open this switch. So we will open the switch by removing, we will open the switch, and as a result the current in the battery will finish instantaneously, but there is a current flowing in the inductor as it was flowing in the previous case. Now, since now we have connected a diode, now the current in the inductor will now flow through the diode. And once the diode is conducting, the conducting diode has a voltage of 0.7 volts. Simple answer. Hence, no spike will be produced. We have used an inductor, we have used a diode, and when the switch is open and there is some initial current in the inductor, the current of the inductor will be diffused through the diode, and this diode is called a freewheeling diode. And once the current flows through the inductor, since it is now forward bias, and a forward bias voltage is always 0.7 volt in the case of silicon or 0.3 volt in the case of germanium. Hence, there will be no spike. So by this way, by using a simple diode, we have removed the high voltage spike. Yeah. So this was the application of the diode to reduce high voltage spikes. Now in the second slide, and yes, one more thing regarding this slide, that this is called a despiking. One is called the spike. This is the spike, and we have despiked or removed the spike using a time. So this is also called despiking or suppression diode. However, in the next slide, we will see that the diode is now in the second slide. We will see that we can remove the spikes, high voltage spikes, by using Zener diodes also. Now we will start to study how to reduce voltage spike using Zener diodes. Okay, so now we come to the next slide. The title of the next slide is Zener diodes high voltage spike control. And the author writes that the Zener diode can also be used to control high voltage spikes and keep them from damaging delicate electronic circuits. Zener diodes are most commonly used in electronic fuel injection circuits that control the firing of the injectors. If clamping diodes were used in parallel with the injection coil, the resulting clamping action would tend to delay the closing of fuel injector nozzle. A Zener diode is commonly used to clamp only the higher voltage portion of the resulting voltage spike without affecting the operation of the injector. See figure 12.12. Right. So now in this paragraph, there are a lot of things to be learnt. So let us read again. First, the author says Zener diode can also be used to control high voltage spikes. So the author has used a word control high voltage spike. In the previous case, the same author used the word reduce. Now the author has used the word control high voltage. So Zener diode, it will not reduce, it will not eliminate high voltage spike. In fact, it will just control them. Second thing that we can learn is that in fuel injection circuits that are very common nowadays, Zener diodes are used instead of clamping diodes. Zener diode will reduce, or Zener diode will control the spike, and we will not use clamping diodes. Why do we not use clamping diodes? Because clamping diode tend to delay the closing of fuel injector nozzle. So if we use clamping diode, they will be harmful to the timing system. Hence, the efficiency will be decreased. A Zener diode, on the other hand, is commonly used to clamp only higher voltage portion of the resulting voltage spike without affecting the operation of the injector. So this is the part that we will see, that in this circuit what we have is, this is the plus 12 volt from the battery. Here is the fuel injector coil winding. It is represented like our normal coil or inductor, and then we have the electronic switch. Now there is an inductor in series. So this inductor, when it is opened or closed, it will not allow instantaneous change in the current. This is what we learned from the previous slide. Same phenomena will happen in this case, but this time, instead of using a clamping diode would have been connected. If we were to use clamping diode, then let me show you the position of the clamping diode. If we were going to use a clamping diode as written over here, then it is saying that were used in parallel with the injection coil. That is, if we were going, although then we will connect the clamping diode like this. This is in parallel. However, this is in parallel. This is the diode in parallel. However, we will not follow this. We will not exercise such circuit. We will not use a clamping diode. We are going to use the Zener diode. Okay. So what will the Zener diode do? Here is the Zener diode. There is a cathode and anode and a small resistance RL to control the current. And this Zener diode is of capacity 35 volt. That is, when the voltage across the Zener diode exceeds 35 volts, then the Zener diode becomes a short circuit and voltage across it becomes only 35 volt. Okay. So in the next slide we will see what is meant by spike over voltage spike control, and how will the Zener diode help us in controlling the voltage spike. So yes, in this diagram, in this slide we will see the definition of over voltage spike. That we see a graph. On the x-axis is time, on the y-axis is voltage, and we turn on the switch, and as a result the voltage which was 0, it will now turns on, and it remains on 12 volts, very stable. Now, what is over voltage? That once that we look at the second graph, we look at the second graph over here, time on the x-axis and voltage on the y-axis. And voltage spike means that when we turn on the switch, during a short period of time, suddenly the voltage rises and it comes to its normal position. It comes to its normal voltage and it rises to a large voltage. In this case, for example, I have given 45 volt. It might be even higher than 45 volt or less than 45 volt. But the thing is that there is only a momentarily increase in voltage, and this comes to the normal voltage after some time. This is called overspike. This overspike may be caused due to inductor or other components. This over voltage can be dangerous and should be removed or reduced. So, and this is what we are going to do. We will remove this, or we will reduce this, or we will control this over voltage spike. Now we come to the next slide. So in this slide we will perform an comparison without using Zener diode and with using Zener diode, and what is the output. So in the first case, let us look at the circuit diagram without Zener diode. This is our circuit diagram. There is no Zener diode. 12 volt, the fuel injector and the switch. As the switch is turned on and off, there is a voltage spike, and this voltage spike will be available across the electronic circuit, and this voltage spike will be harmful to electrical loads or the electronic switch itself. It can be harmful to the electronic switch itself. Okay. So now let us use a Zener diode and see what is the output result. Now we are using it. There is the same circuit, the fuel injector, the switch. However, this time what we have done is that we have used a Zener diode and a RS load series. And this we are assuming that the Zener diode is of 35 volts, and we are also assuming that the over voltage spike is of 45 volt, which is much larger than 35 volt. Now what will happen? This is what will happen, that once that there is a spike, and because the Zener diode is of 35 volts, therefore the spike, it has not been eliminated or it has not been totally removed, but it has been moderated or it has been controlled. Over voltage spike is reduced with the help of Zener diode, and this has been done so that we save time. We do not waste the time of switching angles, we do not waste time of the fuel injector. So this was the application of Zener diode for automobile usages. Now we will come to the next slide. The title of the next slide is light emitting diodes, or in short also called as LEDs. LEDs are essentially, they are diodes, and they are a specialized diode. LEDs, they are diodes that emit light. In simple words, LEDs are diodes, semiconductors that emit light once they are energized. So let us first come to the operation. All diodes radiate some energy during normal operation. Most diodes radiate heat because of the junction barrier voltage drop, typically 0.6 volt for silicon diode This author has 0.6 volt, but more accepted value is 0.7 volt. Light emitting diode or LED radiate light when current flows through the diode in forward bias direction. Yeah. And next paragraph is the forward bias voltage required for an LED ranges between 1.5 and 2.2 volts. An LED will only emit light if the voltage at the anode positive electrode is at least 1.5 to 2.2 volts higher than the voltage at the cathode. So now let us discuss that. The author starts by stating that all diodes radiate some energy during normal operation. That's very true. That energy is radiated from diodes once they are in normal operation. Most diodes, that is the normal diodes, by most diodes the author means normal diodes, those diodes which are used for rectification, those diodes that do not emit light, those diodes that we use in electronic circuits. These most diodes radiate heat because of the junction barrier voltage, which is 0.6 volt or 0.7 volt. So what is this heat formula? That is heat, the energy or the power dissipated is the energy divided by time, and power dissipated through the junction barrier voltage is equal to voltage drop across the diode multiplied by ID, where ID is the current flowing through the diode. So the power, because it is DC voltage, so no need for cos theta. So power radiated from a normal diode is equal to VD, that is the junction barrier voltage drop, VD multiplied by ID, that is the current through the diode. So this means that this power being radiated, which is equal to VD multiplied by ID, is a function of voltage drop and a function of current flowing through the diode. So higher the current flowing through the diode, more heat or more power will be dissipated. We can always multiply this power into time to get the total energy dissipated. However, in the case of LEDs, these LEDs, they radiate light. They also radiate heat. It's not that LEDs, they don't radiate heat. No, LEDs, they emit two types of energy. First, energy in the form of heat, and second, energy in the form of light. So LEDs, they emit light and heat. LEDs are made for this purpose, to emit light. LEDs, the purpose of making LEDs, the purpose of using LEDs is to obtain light. And this light will be obtained once the diode is in forward bias. Once the diode is in forward bias condition. So if we want to emit light, or if we want to obtain light from LED, we must forward bias the diode. How do we forward bias the diode? This is written in the second paragraph. An LED will only emit light if voltage at the anode is at least 1.5 to 2.2 volts higher than the voltage at the cathode. So we must forward bias the diode such that the voltage at the anode terminal must be 1.5 volts to 2.2 volts higher than the voltage at the cathode. Right. So in the first diagram over here, we see normal LEDs that are available. They come in various colors, plus they come in various shapes and sizes. each LED will have two terminals. One will be the anode, one will be the cathode. Each LED will have a casing. Each LED will have a casing, and inside this casing, casing, we will have the semiconductor materials plus a reflector. So in the next diagram, we can see the construction of one LED. First of all, let us start with the terminals. This is the cathode terminal and the anode terminal. And before proceeding with the construction, I would like to share with my students that simple two terminals becomes very difficult to identify. Simple two terminals become very difficult to identify. So the manufacturers, what they do is, when we purchase an LED, we will observe that one terminal is of shorter length and one terminal is of longer length. This is done purposely so that the user of the LED can identify easily that which terminal is used is for what term is which terminal is the anode and which terminal is the cathode. Always the cathode terminal will be shorter. The cathode terminal will always be shorter. The cathode terminal is the place where we give lesser voltage, and always the anode terminal will be longer. The anode terminal will always have a slightly longer length so that we can identify. Otherwise, we will always have to use an LCR, a VOAM meter to identify which is the anode and which is the cathode. So for fast operation, the longer length represents the anode, and we should always connect the anode to the positive side of the battery, and this longer length represents the anode. Right, this was the identification of the terminals. Then inside the LED, we will have the connectors, we will have the wire, and here this small box represents the PN junction, the semiconductor part. This is where all the activity is happening. This is where all the activity, where all the light emitting activity is happening. Then on top of the semiconductor lies a reflector, so that light is distributed uniformly. And then we have the synthetic lens. Synthetic lens disperses the light. Now LEDs are beneficial as compared to our normal or traditional bulbs, such that LEDs, they consume less power. LEDs, they are less in price, they are more economical, and they also consume less volume. They consume less volume, and they may be of light in weight. They may be less in weight also. If we compare the LED with normal bulb, a bulb has a tungsten wire. This we pass current through the tungsten wire, and this tungsten wire emits light plus it emits heat. The LED will also emit light and heat, but the heat transmitted from the LED will be less than the heat transmitted from a tungsten wire bulb. So this is why LEDs, they can be used for energy saving applications also. Right, so now we come to the next slide. Next slide, title is photodiodes. Title of the next slide is photodiodes. So let us read the construction. A photodiode is sensitive to light. When light energy strikes the diode, electrons are released and the diode will conduct in forward bias direction. Bracket. The light energy is used to overcome barrier voltage. The light energy is used to overcome the barrier voltage. The resistance across the photodiode decreases as the intensity of light increases. So as the light intensity increases, the resistance of the photodiode will decrease. This characteristic makes the photodiode a useful electronic device for controlling some automotive lighting systems such as automatic headlights. The symbol used for a diode is shown in figure 12.16. So here is the symbolic representation of a photodiode. That is, we have a normal diode, the anode terminal and the cathode terminal, and then these two arrows they represent the light falling on the photodiode. So this is the symbolic representation of a photodiode. Now figure 12.15 represents the physical drawing of a photodiode. That is the two terminals, one representing the anode and second representing the cathode, and then a metal casing so that light only falls within a specified area, and this specified area is the window. This window is provided so that light will fall through this window. Another diagram of the photodiode is where we use a plastic casing which looks very similar to the normal LED, and the real life picture is shown over here. That is the cathode terminal and anode terminal and the plastic casing, and inside the plastic casing will rest the lens. This lens will focus the light into the, or this will focus the lens will focus the light onto the semiconductor where the photodiode action is happening. Now observe in this diagram again that the photodiode consists of two terminals, the cathode terminal and the anode terminal. The cathode terminal is kept shorter in length, whereas the anode terminal is kept longer in length, so that the user who is using the photodiode can easily identify that which terminal is the cathode and which terminal is the anode terminal. And next we have the symbolic representation of the photodiode. Now we come to the next slide. Photoresistor. Photoresistor is also a photodiode. A photoresistor is a semiconductor material, usually candium sulfide, that changes resistance with the presence or absence of light. So a simple definition of a photoresistor is that a photoresistor is a semiconductor material, usually candium sulfide, that changes or alters its resistance by the presence or absence of light. When there is no light, that is when there is darkness, the resistance of the photoresistor will be high resistance. Therefore, when the resistance is large, when the resistance is high, less current will pass through the photoresistor, or very small current, or maybe zero current will pass through the photoresistance for the photoresistor when the light is absent, when there is darkness. However, when there is light or when there is enough light, then we will get a low resistance across the anode and cathode terminal. And when we have low resistance, large current can pass through the photoresistor. Because resistance is reduced when the photoresistor is exposed to light, the photoresistor can be used to control headlight dimmer relays and for automotive headlights. See figure 12.17. So in figure 12.17 we see the symbolic representation of a photoresistor. This diagram is representing a binary photoresistor. What is binary? That is, either it is on or it is off. Binary, 0 or 1, 1 or 0. So binary means that when there is light, the resistance becomes low and current can pass. So we say that the photoresistor is on, and when there is no light or when there is less light, then the resistance is large and zero current or very small current passes, and we say that photoresistor is off. This is the representation of binary photoresistor, on and off. However, in this next diagram, we see that there is an arrow over the resistance. This arrow over the resistance represents a variable resistance. So the meaning of this diagram is that as light increases, the resistance gradually decreases. When there is no light, there is maximum resistance and we get minimum current. But as we increase the intensity of light, the photoresistor gradually decreases its resistance. As we increase light, the resistance of the photoresistor decreases, and as the resistance decreases, the current increases gradually, because V is equal to I into R. Simple ohmic law, V is equal to I into R. So this second symbol represents our variable resistance implemented using photoresistor. Now we come to the second slide. Second slide is also continuation of photoresistor. We can detect the presence or absence of light using photoresistor. The presence or absence of light can be detected using a photoresistor. That is very true. This is what we have learned in the previous slide. In normal condition, when light is not present, photoresistor slab shows low conductivity. Low conductivity means large resistance. Low conductivity means low conduction of current, low conductivity. And we always have low current when the resistance is large. So let us read again. In normal condition, when light is not present, the photoresistor slab, we will see what is this slab, shows low conductivity due to the lack of surface electrons. So two new terms introduced in this sentence. What is this slab and what is the surface electrons? In this diagram, this is diagram 5.13, we see a slab of semiconductor slab. Here is the photoresistor material. These two shaded bars, they indicate the terminals. The terminals are then connected to a external battery. This is the photoresistor slab, which consists of our semiconductor material. and light will fall on this slab. Light will be allowed to fall on this slab. As the light falls on the slab, the resistance of the slab decreases and more current flows through the slab. Where will this current come from? This current comes from the external battery. Now you can see that I have shown current. This is the current I, the traditional current, the movement of positive charges. However, in the diagram we see electronic current flowing in the opposite direction as of the traditional current. So we are talking of the same thing. Surface electrons. What are surface electrons? The light will fall on the surface of the material. Hence, initially when the light falls, the light will only penetrate up till a certain depth, and as far as the light penetrates, this light will activate the electrons. So since most of the light will fall on the surface, only the electron present on the surface, they will start to move. And as we increase the intensity of light, this light will activate more and more electrons within the slab, and hence we will obtain more current. However, because in the initial stage light falls on the surface, therefore initially current or electrons available on the surface, they start to move. Now we come to the next slide. We will discuss the characteristics of photoresistors. When a beam of light, and I'm reading from the slide, when a beam of light is exposed to a photoresistive material as shown in figure 5.14, this is the figure, photons are absorbed by the material, the electron-hole pairs are generated. Surface electrons, minority carriers, increase the conductivity of the material between the two terminals of the device, giving rise to a photonic drift current. This is the figure 5.14. In this figure, we have a battery. This battery is external. Then we have the photoresistive material and two terminals shown in the shaded, and photons or light is allowed to fall on the photoresistive material. When photons, as they fall or as the material absorbs photons, what will happen? Electron-hole pairs will be produced. What is this electron-hole pair? So now let us discuss the creation of electron-hole pair. That when inside the atomic structure, the electrons present on the valence shell, when they absorb the energy from the photons, they jump to a higher orbit, they jump into the conduction level, and they leave behind a vacancy. This is the generation of electron-hole pair. Now we have electrons, and these electrons, due to minority carriers, they are now present for conduction, and hence we have a number of electrons that will conduct, and now the material will start to conduct, or as the author says, give rise to a photonic drift current. So in this diagram, photons are falling on the surface, the electron-hole pairs are being generated, the electrons, they leave their valence shell, they leave a hole behind, and they themselves come to the conduction shell, and they are ready for conduction. And due to the presence of a electric potential, the electrons are attracted towards the positive terminal. So in this diagram we can see electronic current flowing into the battery, into the positive terminal of the battery. However, we always write this as our conventional current. That conventional current is flowing in the opposite direction. Now we see this symbol of the photoresistor and a physical construction of the photoresistor, that is the substrate, and this strip lines, thin strip of photoresistor material. This is the place where we have the cadmium sulfide. Here is the material which is composed of cadmium sulfide. This is the material which is composed of cadmium sulfide over here. Why are there many bends and turns? So that more strip is used. So that more strip is used and more light can fall on the strip, and we can have a more variable resistance. And here is the variable resistance representation. Now let us look at the characteristics. On this characteristic graph, we see on the x-axis illumination unit is lux, and on the y-axis is the resistance measured in ohms. So as illumination increases, the resistance, it decreases. As we increase the light intensity, as we increase the light illumination in lux, the resistance of the material decreases and more current can pass. So for example, here it is written dark night or dark time, when there is no light, there is no photon or very small number of photons, resistance is reasonably large. As there is, and as we increase the light, we reach a average time, there is a the resistance has decreased, and with maximum light or full sunlight, there will be a very small resistance. So this is the characteristics of the photoresistor, where we are comparing, or the resistance of the photoresistor is shown as a function of light measured in lux. Now we come to the next slide. The next slide also shows various photoresistors. The industrial name given to the photoresistor is light dependent resistor. In the industry, we can call photoresistor, but it is more oftenly called light dependent resistor or simple LDR. Simple LDR. And here we see various diagrams of LDR. And then the cadmium sulfide material, on which the light falls and whose resistance will vary with the intensity of light. Now there is no identification of anode cathode. We can use this either way. So there is no variation in the two terminal length. We will find both terminals of equal length, because we can use them either way. So this was the basic structure of LDR. Now let us look at this diagram. That here the bending and turning material is our normal cadmium sulfide track. Now over here, this silver, what is this material? This is an opaque material. This is an opaque material. What do we mean by opaque? An opaque material is a material through which light cannot pass through. So we are intentionally focusing light only to fall on the cadmium sulfide track, so that we can get a reasonable amount of resistance. We do not want light to fall on the remaining surface area. So it is kept covered using an opaque material. So this was the silver material, and light is only allowed to fall on the exposed cadmium sulfide track. This was also shown in a previous slide. For example, over here, that there was the metal housing. This metal housing was the opaque material. The light cannot pass through the opaque material, and only light is only allowed to pass in this exposed window, which will be used of some transparent material. Right, next article is the thermistor. This will be our last article for today, thermistor. Let us discuss the construction of a thermistor. A thermistor is a semiconductor material such as silicon that has been doped to provide a given resistance. When the thermistor is heated, the electron within the crystal gain energy and electrons are released. When thermistor is heated, electrons within the crystal gain energy and electrons are released. This means that a thermistor actually produces small voltage when heated. Voltage is applied to a thermistor, its resistance decreases because the thermistor itself is acting as a current carrier rather than a resistor at high temperature. The usages of thermistors. Thermistor is commonly used as a temperature sensing device for coolant temperature and to intake manifold air temperature. Because thermistors operate in a manner opposite to that of a typical conductor, they are called negative temperature coefficient thermistors. Their resistance decreases as the temperature increases. The thermistor symbols are shown in figure 12.20. Here is the symbol of a thermistor. So let us discuss what the author has written, that a thermistor is a semiconductor whose purpose is to vary the resistance with the decrease or increase of temperature. When the thermistor is heated, electron within the crystal gain energy and electrons are released. So when we heat the thermistor, the resistance of the thermistor will decrease. And this thermistor is used for various applications within automotive domain. For example, coolant temperature, we get the knowledge of temperature of the engine. We get the knowledge of temperature within the seating environment. Now, what is this negative temperature coefficient? Negative temperature coefficient means that the resistance of the thermistor, this is heat, as heat is applied, the resistance will follow a negative slope. This is the meaning of negative temperature coefficient, that as the temperature, or as the, yes, this should be temperature on the x-axis. We provide heat to get a variable temperature. So as the temperature increases, the resistance will follow a negative slope. The resistance will decrease. This is the meaning of negative temperature coefficient. Now in this circuit diagram, a very simple circuit diagram, that there is a voltage supply, battery, a thermistor, and in this circuit diagram we see a single battery, then a thermistor connected in series, and one microampere meter. This is our microampere meter. So this circuit is a simple experiment to demonstrate the working of a thermistor. We provide heat, or we provide a high temperature to the thermistor, and we will observe that as we increase the temperature, more and more current will pass through the thermistor. So this means that as heat, or as the temperature of the thermistor is increasing, the resistance of the temperature decreases, and as the resistance decreases, more and more current pass through the ampere meter, and the ampere meter will shift to a large, or will demonstrate a large current value. Right. So this now brings us to the end of part 2 of electronic fundamental online lecture. Inshallah, I will make the third and final part of the electronic fundamental online lecture. So I will post this later on. So at the end, thank you very much for your time. Please take care of yourself. Please take care of your family members. अल्लाह ताला आप सबको अपनी ख़ास रहमत में रखे, अपनी ख़ास प्रोटेक्शन में रखे. मेरे लिए दुआ कीजिएगा. थैंक यू वेरी मच. अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाह.